My name is Khalid. I am 27 years old. I was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. My father was a respected Imam. He led one of the largest mosques in our city. Everyone knew our family. Everyone respected us. But respect came with a price. From the moment I could walk, my life was Islam. 5 prayers every day. Memorizing the Quran word by word. Strict discipline. My father watched everything I did, every word I spoke, every step I took. "You will be greater than me," he would say. "You will lead thousands to Allah." I believed him. I wanted to make him proud. I studied harder than other boys. I prayed longer. I memorized faster. The other children at the mosque looked up to me. I was the Imam's perfect son. But inside, something was wrong. Even when I followed every rule, I felt empty. Even when I prayed for hours, my heart felt cold. Even when I recited the Quran perfectly, God felt far away. I loved Muhammad. I truly did. He was everything to me. The perfect example. The greatest man who ever lived. I dreamed of following his footsteps. I wanted to become a preacher even more devoted than my father. But the emptiness grew. At night, when everyone was asleep, I would lie awake asking questions I could never speak out loud. Why did my heart feel so distant from Allah? Why did all my prayers feel like they hit the ceiling and fell back down? Why was there this hunger inside me that nothing could fill? I was afraid of these thoughts. In Saudi Arabia, doubt is dangerous. Questions can destroy families. They can destroy lives. So I buried my questions deep inside. I smiled during the day. I prayed louder. I studied harder. But the void in my heart kept growing. I had no idea that God was about to turn my world upside down. In Saudi Arabia, being the Imam's son meant living under a magnifying glass. Every morning, people watched me walk to the mosque. They watched how I dressed, how I spoke, how I carried myself. If I smiled too much, they whispered. If I looked serious, they nodded with approval. "Khalid is becoming a true leader," they would tell my father. "Just like you." But I felt like I was suffocating. Our house was next to the mosque. Prayer calls echoed through our walls 5 times a day. My mother would wake me before dawn for Fajr. My father expected me beside him for every prayer. No exceptions, no excuses. After school, while other boys played football, I studied Islamic texts. While they laughed and joked, I practiced sermon delivery. My father would sit in his chair, arms crossed, listening to every word. "Your voice must carry authority," he would say. "People must feel Allah's power through you." I tried so hard to feel that power myself, but it never came. During Ramadan, our family fasted perfectly. We never complained. We never showed weakness. The community expected nothing less from us. I would sit for hours in the mosque, reciting verses, feeling proud of my devotion. But at night, alone in my room, the emptiness returned. I remember one evening, I was reading about Muhammad's life. I knew every story by heart. His battles, his wives, his teachings. I had defended him 1,000 times against anyone who questioned him. He was my hero, my perfect example. But that night, something felt different. As I read, questions began forming in my mind. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. Questions about things that didn't make sense to me. Questions I had never allowed myself to think before. I closed the book quickly. I was terrified of my own thoughts. "What's wrong with me?" I whispered to myself. "Why am I doubting?" The next morning, my father announced that I would give my first sermon the following Friday. The whole community would be there. Important religious leaders from other mosques. This was my moment to prove myself. I should have felt honored. Instead, I felt trapped. For days, I prepared that sermon. I wrote about submission to Allah, about following Muhammad's perfect example, about the beauty of Islamic law. Every word was correct. Every verse was properly quoted. But as I practiced in front of the mirror, I realized something that scared me to my core. I was preaching words I was no longer sure I believed. The invisible prison around me was getting smaller every day, and I was beginning to wonder if the key to my freedom lay somewhere I had never dared to look. The Friday of my first sermon arrived like a storm I couldn't escape. The mosque was packed. Men filled every row. My father sat in the front, his eyes fixed on me with pride and expectation. Religious leaders from across Riyadh had come to hear the Imam's son speak. I walked to the pulpit with steady steps. My voice was strong, my words were clear. I spoke about submission to Allah, about the perfect example of Muhammad, about the beauty of following Islamic law without question. Everyone nodded. They whispered prayers of approval. After I finished, men came to shake my father's hand. "Your son will be a great leader," they said. "Allah has blessed him with wisdom." But inside, I felt like a fraud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the words I had spoken. They were the right words, the expected words. But they felt empty in my mouth, like I was reading someone else's script. I began to notice things I had ignored before. When I prayed, I was just repeating movements. When I read the Quran, I was just reciting sounds. When I listened to my father preach, I heard rules and commands, but no love, no peace, no real connection to God. The hunger inside me grew stronger. I started staying awake later, asking questions in the darkness of my room. Why did I feel so distant from Allah when I followed every rule perfectly? Why did my prayers feel like they bounced off the ceiling? Why was there this aching emptiness that nothing could fill? During the day, I played my role, the perfect son, the future Imam, the devoted Muslim. But at night, I was drowning in doubt. One evening, I was walking home from the mosque when I overheard two old men talking. "Young Khalid preached beautifully last Friday," one said. "Yes," the other replied. "But did you see his eyes? There's something missing there, something empty." Their words hit me like a punch to the chest. Even strangers could see it. The emptiness I tried so hard to hide was visible to everyone. That night, I did something I had never done before. I prayed a different kind of prayer. "Allah," I whispered, "if you are really there, why do I feel so lost? I've given you everything, my time, my energy, my whole life, but I still feel empty inside. What am I missing?" No answer came. The silence was deafening. I realized then that I wasn't just questioning my faith anymore. I was starving for something I couldn't name. Something that all my prayers, all my studying, all my perfect behavior couldn't give me. There was a hunger in my soul that Islam wasn't filling, and I was beginning to suspect that maybe, just maybe, I was looking for God in the wrong place. I had no idea that my answer was coming sooner than I thought. 3 months later, my father called me into his study. "Son," he said, "I have great news. You've been accepted to study Islamic theology at the University of London. You'll spend 2 years there, learning from the best scholars. When you return, you'll be ready to lead your own mosque." I should have felt excited. Instead, I felt afraid. Not of leaving home, but of what I might discover about myself away from my father's watchful eyes. London was different from everything I knew. The noise, the crowds, the freedom. For the first time in my life, no one was watching my every move. No one knew I was the Imam's son. I rented a small apartment near the university. My father called every day to check on me. "Remember why you're there," he would say, "to become a stronger defender of our faith." I threw myself into my studies. I read everything about Islamic history and theology, but something unexpected happened. The more I studied, the more questions arose. Late at night, when my coursework was done, I found myself researching things I had never questioned before. Stories about Muhammad's life that didn't match what I had been taught. historical facts that made me uncomfortable. I wasn't trying to doubt. I was trying to strengthen my faith. I wanted to be ready to defend Islam against any criticism from non-Muslims. But the questions kept growing. One evening, I was in the university library, surrounded by books about Islamic history. I was exhausted, confused. The doubts I had carried for years were now impossible to ignore. I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "God, I don't understand anymore. I've spent my whole life serving you through Islam, but I feel more lost than ever. If you exist, if you really care about me, show me the truth, even if it hurts." I didn't expect an answer. I certainly didn't expect what happened next. That night, I had the most vivid dream of my entire life. I wasn't sleeping lightly. I was in the deepest sleep I had ever experienced. But what I saw felt more real than anything I had ever experienced while awake. I was standing in a place filled with light, not harsh light, but warm light, peaceful light. And in front of me stood a man dressed in white robes. His face was kind, but his eyes were like fire. Not angry fire, pure fire, holy fire. He knew me. I could feel it. He knew everything about me. Every doubt, every question, every moment of emptiness I had ever felt. Then he spoke my name. Khalid. The sound of his voice went through me like electricity. I knew immediately who he was, even though I had never seen him before. "Jesus, you search for me in Muhammad," he said, "but I am the way you have always been looking for." I tried to speak, but no words came out. I tried to move, but I couldn't. All I could do was stare at him and feel something I had never felt before. Love. Complete. Overwhelming love. I woke up with tears streaming down my face. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. The dream was so real I could still feel the warmth of that light on my skin. For hours I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to understand what had happened. Jesus had called me by name. The Jesus I had been taught was just a prophet. The Jesus I had been told was less than Muhammad. This Jesus had looked at me with eyes full of love and claimed to be the answer to my lifelong hunger. I was terrified. I was excited. I was confused. My world had just been turned completely upside down. The days after the dream were the hardest of my life. I couldn't focus on my studies. I couldn't eat properly. I couldn't sleep without seeing those eyes of fire looking at me with perfect love. Every time I tried to pray in the Islamic way, I felt empty. But every time I thought about Jesus, my heart burned. I was terrified of what was happening to me. For weeks, I fought against it. I reminded myself of everything I had been taught. Jesus was just a prophet. Muhammad was the final messenger. Islam was the only true path to God. But the hunger in my soul was finally being fed, and I couldn't deny it. I started reading the Bible in secret. I bought a copy from a bookstore far from the university, wearing a hood, looking over my shoulder like I was buying something illegal. In Saudi Arabia, owning a Bible could get you arrested. The words on those pages spoke to me in ways the Quran never had. When Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest," I felt like he was speaking directly to my tired heart. But I was still the Imam's son. I still had a role to play. During my father's daily phone calls, I tried to sound normal. "How are your studies going?" he would ask. "Very well, Father. I'm learning so much about defending our faith." If only he knew what I was really learning. 3 months passed. The pull toward Jesus grew stronger every day. But so did my fear of what would happen if anyone discovered my secret. Then my father announced he was coming to visit. "I want to see how you're progressing," he said over the phone. "I've arranged meetings with several Islamic scholars in London. They're eager to meet my son." Panic filled my chest. How could I face him? How could I sit through meetings with Islamic scholars when my heart belonged to Jesus? When my father arrived, I tried to be the son he expected. We visited mosques. We met with religious leaders. I smiled and nodded and spoke the right words. But inside, I was dying. One evening, we were having dinner in my small apartment. My father was telling me about his plans for my future. When you return to Riyadh, I want you to marry Fatima, the daughter of Imam Hassan. Together, you two will build a strong Islamic family. You'll lead the largest mosque in the city someday. As he spoke, I felt like the walls were closing in on me. He was planning my entire life, a life that would be a lie. That night, after my father had gone to sleep in the guest room, I knelt beside my bed and prayed to Jesus for the first time. "Jesus," I whispered, "I don't know what to do. I can't keep living this lie. But if I tell the truth, I'll lose everything. My family, my country, my identity. Help me." The next morning, my father found me reading. "What book is that?" he asked. My blood turned to ice. I had fallen asleep with the Bible open on my chest. I quickly closed it, but it was too late. He had seen the cover. The look in his eyes changed from curiosity to horror to rage. "What is this?" he demanded, grabbing the book from my hands. "Father, I can explain. You're reading the Bible." His voice was shaking with anger and disbelief. "My son, the future Imam, is reading the book of infidels." I tried to speak, but he continued shouting. "Have you lost your mind? Have you forgotten who you are, who your family is?" Neighbors started knocking on the walls, complaining about the noise. "I was just researching, Father, to better defend Islam. Don't lie to me." He threw the Bible across the room. "I can see it in your eyes. You're not the same person who left Riyadh." He was right. I wasn't. "Father, please listen." "No, you listen to me. We're going home, tomorrow. You're going to see Imam Abdullah for spiritual cleansing. This Western poison will not destroy my family's reputation." That night, he made phone calls. I could hear him through the thin walls, talking to religious leaders back home, making arrangements for my correction. I knew my time was running out. I had to make a choice. Live a lie for the rest of my life, or follow the truth that had set my heart on fire. The persecution had begun, but so had my real journey toward freedom. My father didn't sleep that night. I could hear him pacing in the next room, making phone calls to Saudi Arabia. His voice was low, but I caught fragments of his conversations. "Yes, he's been corrupted. Western influence. We need to act quickly." I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that everything was about to change. In a few hours, we would be on a plane back to Riyadh, back to a life I could no longer live. At 3 in the morning, I got up quietly and walked to my small kitchen. I made tea and sat by the window, looking out at the London streets. For the first time in months, my mind was completely clear. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't go back to Saudi Arabia and pretend to be someone I wasn't. I couldn't marry Fatima and build a life on lies. I couldn't stand in a pulpit and preach words I no longer believed. The cost would be everything. My family, my inheritance, my country, my identity as Khalid, son of the respected Imam. But the alternative was worse, living in spiritual death while appearing to be alive. I picked up the Bible my father had thrown across the room. Its pages were scattered, but the words were still there, still calling to me. I opened to a passage I had read many times. "If anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." Those words burned in my heart. At dawn, while my father was still sleeping, I knelt on the floor of my small apartment and made the most important decision of my life. "Jesus," I whispered, "I don't fully understand everything yet, but I know you're real. I know you love me. I know you're the answer to every question I've ever had about God." Tears started flowing down my face. "I give you my life, all of it. I know what it will cost me, but I can't live without you anymore. Take my heart. Take my future. Take everything. The moment I said those words, something changed inside me. The emptiness that had haunted me for years suddenly filled with warmth. The hunger in my soul was satisfied. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alive. I sat there crying for an hour. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief, of joy, of coming home. When my father woke up, I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for him. "Are you packed?" he asked coldly. "Our flight is in 6 hours." "Father," I said quietly, "I'm not going back to Saudi Arabia." His face turned red. "What did you say?" "I can't live that life anymore. I've found the truth." "You found nothing but lies and deception." "I've found Jesus." The words hung in the air between us like a sword. My father stared at me as if I had just died in front of him. In his eyes, I probably had. "You are no longer my son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Those words should have destroyed me. A few months ago, they would have. But now, I felt a peace I couldn't explain. "I understand, Father." "I'm sorry for the pain this causes you." "Don't you dare speak to me about pain." He grabbed his suitcase. "You have brought shame on our entire family. Your name will never be mentioned in our house again." He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned around one last time. "The son I raised is dead," he said. "No, Father," I replied softly. "For the first time in my life, your son is truly alive." He slammed the door behind him. I never saw him again. But I wasn't alone. Jesus was with me. And that was enough. That was 3 years ago. Today, I live in a small apartment in Manchester. I work as a translator for refugees and immigrants. It's simple work, but it gives me purpose. Every day, I help people who, like me, have left everything behind searching for a better life. My name is still Khalid, but everything else has changed. I wake up each morning with peace in my heart. The emptiness that haunted me for 27 years is gone. When I pray now, I know God hears me. When I read the Bible, His words speak directly to my soul. I was baptized 6 months after my father left London. It was in a small church with only a few people present. As I went under the water, I felt like my old life was being washed away. When I came up, I was truly born again. The pastor who baptized me has become like a father to me. His name is David. He's an older man who spent years ministering to Muslims who had found Jesus. He understood my journey. He understood my pain. "Khalid," he told me after my baptism, "God didn't just save you for yourself. He saved you to reach others." He was right. I now help other Muslims who are questioning their faith. They find me through word of mouth, through secret messages, through dreams and visions that lead them to the truth. I've seen Iranians, Egyptians, Pakistanis, and yes, even other Saudis, surrender their lives to Jesus. Each one pays a price. Some lose their families, some lose their countries, some live in hiding, but all of them find what I found. Life. Real life. I think about my father often. I pray for him every day. I know he believes his son is dead, but I hope that someday he'll see that his son simply came alive in a way he never expected. I miss my family. I miss my country. I miss the life I thought I wanted. But I don't regret my choice. How can I regret finding the truth? The love I thought I had for Muhammad was real, but it was incomplete. It was like loving a shadow while the real person stood behind you, waiting to be noticed. All my life, I was searching for the perfect example of how to live, how to love, how to follow God. That perfect example was never Muhammad. It was always Jesus. He is the way I was always looking for. He is the truth that my heart was always seeking. He is the life that my soul was always craving. If you are a Muslim listening to this, I want you to know something. Jesus loves you. He knows your name. He sees your hunger for God. He understands your questions, your doubts, your emptiness. You don't have to stay in the prison I lived in for 27 years. You can be free. Call on his name. Ask him to show you the truth, even if it costs you everything. He will answer. He answered me, and he will answer you. And if you are not a Muslim, but you feel that same emptiness I felt, that same hunger for something real, I have the same message for you. Jesus is calling your name too. I am Khalid, son of an Imam from Saudi Arabia. I risked everything to follow Jesus, and I would do it again 1,000 times, because in losing my life, I finally found it. Pray for me. Pray for my family. Pray for the millions of Muslims around the world who are searching for truth